I never thought when I started making these league race edits that I was ever going to have to exclude music and make a commentary, because I never thought that I'd have an entertaining race enough. I thought that my China race was as entertaining as league races were going to get, from my perspective alone at least, particularly considering in this league I just tend to dominate races sometimes, not being cocky or anything. But as you can tell by the video length, 30 minutes almost, I have had to kind of compromise on that deal, and I'm definitely going to have to commentate this. So you can see on my first lap there, screen turns off, and now you can see on my second lap, this is an all or nothing. Going into this race, I thought that I was, at worst, like a very good contention to win the race, because my pace seemed undoubtedly sublime. Reese was probably second fastest, but in qualifying pace especially, I was near enough unmatchable. So you can see there to the first sector, probably not my best sector, and I lost the rear end out of turn 1, which cost me a bit of time. Only just about down on Elgo's time, who also seemed to have sublime pace that I never knew about. So through the left-hander there, a bit wide. And now as we go into the trickiest part of the track, in my opinion, hitting it, you have to be totally committed through there. Clip the hairpin, could have done it better, could have done it a lot worse though. And then into the hairpin now. As we go onto the straight, I feel confident that this lap is going to be at least challenging Elgo, at least going for like a low 37 maybe. As you can see, I'm purple by a quarter of a second, run a bit wide there, and do this line that I've done every single lap in practice for the race. And oh, there we are. Qualifying is over for the Singapore Grand Prix. I'm going to be starting on the back row. You can see FX takes provisional pole. I was very confident in the last sector as well, so I thought that I could at least do a mid 37 on that lap, at least go near the front of the grid, and yeah. Not good. Now we can see FX, who put it on provisional pole, of course, and then at the end of the session, Reese ends up on the front row, but it's Elgo who takes, for McLaren, a very, very good pole position time. That, I mean, looking at the front row being a 37.7, I'd have definitely beaten that if I'd completed my lap. Not sure about the 37.4 that Elgo set, but it would have been close. I think if I hooked up the last sector, I could have got it. But instead, I'm starting 18th on the grid for the Singapore Grand Prix, alongside Ridiculous, who also didn't set a time. I'm going to have to carve my way through the field at a track that's notoriously difficult to overtake at. You can see everyone's race directors now, because I always feel the need to look through everyone's sector times. There you can see my sector times before it all went a bit haywire at the end. But yeah, see Hayden there starting 4th. Red Bull's two of my championship rivals going into this race, if you will, starting quite far down. Hayden in 4th, who's the other one, and of course my teammate. So we go on the grid for the Singapore Grand Prix. 5 lights are about to come on. There they are, and lights out for the Singapore Grand Prix, starting 18th on the super soft tyres, already past the Ferrari into 17th, and Mr. Alcon on the right into 16th down the inside. Mouseman squeezes me off at turn 1, lose the rear end. Then Alcon comes across to avoid the Force India of Blue Nation, who's lagging a lot, and I get wing damage off it. I'm in 17th, really hasn't been the start I wanted, to the inside of Mouseman. Again, there's contact with him, he loses the rear end and goes straight into me. I was so lucky to not lose more front wing right there, and I'm into last place. It's actually been the worst start possible to this race almost, apart from a monumental crash down the inside of Molson, but I'm still last at the end of the first sector. And going into the hairpin now, yellow flags, there's cars on the wall. Puxtel's in the wall, but I get an illegal overtake on him, which is fucking terrible. Fucking retarded. So I have to try and let them through as we go 3 wide, and then Gracio has to slow up as well. They're going 3 wide again. I'm still in last place halfway through lap 1. Round the outside of the Ferrari, round the outside again. A lovely double move past Puckstar into 17th place, and we're finally starting to make progress, I think. You're Ridiculous, who's the only driver to start behind me, runs wide and into 16th now as we're about to enter the last sector of the lap. Only for win, runs wide, is hit into the wall. I think he has wing damage now. I'm going to try and get him into this next bit, down the inside. There's an absolute cluster. They're going 4 wide ahead. There's an absolute cluster. Lunation's laggy car is causing absolute carnage up there. Hold it around the outside there. I'm into 15th, but then there's this cluster of 4 cars that are just going ridiculously slow, trying to avoid each other. There's front wings everywhere. Around the outside of the McLaren, Lunation's lagging up the road. And then they all pit at the end of the lap, apart from Lunation's laggy car, who decides to just steer across the track and almost take me out. But there we go, at the end of lap 1, in 10th place, with Pie cars ahead and Grey Shoe behind, who was in a similar position to me, did quite well on lap 1. And despite what looked disastrous after the first half of it, I've ended up gaining 8 positions instead of losing 1. So I've still got the wing damage to think about now as we move into the race. As Pie cars, who's got a lot more wing damage by the looks of it, is going quite slowly. He pits at the end of lap 2. That's into the single-digit positions now, which is great progress. 10 places on where I was a lap and a half ago. THM, though, who's not had a good start and not had the start he wanted, only 3.6 seconds ahead on those ultra softs. We'll see if he has wing damage and see if we can catch him, because he looks quite far behind the train ahead of him. So he might well have wing damage, in which case we can close him down as we get further into the race. Jeez, I'm terrible at commentating. And it doesn't help that I can't breathe because I've got the lungs of a 78-year-old dead person. But we've got Coldo's disconnected here, and that means that I'm going to go into 8th place before I'm now on the back of THM. He definitely has wing damage because he's going really, really slow. I hope he has wing damage, otherwise he's just not very fast. But there's a lot of smoke coming off his car. Those ultra soft tyres, he definitely is going very slowly. We should definitely try and overtake him as soon as possible. I don't want to be stuck behind him for very long. Mr. Alcon becomes the second retirement of the race. Gracia moves into 9th. DRS now on THM. Going to try down the inside into turn 1. Doesn't quite eventuate. I'm miles too far back, to be honest. Even for a smidge dive bomb, that's a bit audacious, but we're going to try and get a run. There's no absolute rush to try and get past him. He's obviously very slow, so we just need to bide our time, try and get the place without crashing into the wall like I just did there. Very, very lucky to not be spinning or into the wall and losing more wing. I'm surprised my wing is still technically still all intact, even if it has got a bit of a brush on it. Just giving me a bit of understeer. But yeah, I'm surprised how good my progress generally was in the first few laps of this race, that I managed to gain so many positions, and surprised that I didn't end up crashing at all, because I was very risky at the start of the first lap and somehow didn't get totally destroyed, and no one did really. But now on the inside, now I have THM, good run off the last corner, finally close enough. It's an audacious move, but we get it done. I can't breathe. Fucking hell. But we're into 7th place now, and it's Julian ahead. There's a pack of about 3 cars that are in a train, and I'm going to try and hunt them down. They've obviously got wing damage themselves because they're not going very fast. I think everyone's crashed at some point, as Euridiculous's lap car lets us through, and we're going to chase down Julian as we go under the underpass. And across the line at the end of lap 7, it's now Maku who's in 6th, who's been overtaken, obviously. There's also FX1L in that 3-car train. It's 5 seconds to them at the start of lap 8, so I'd be very surprised if I can catch them quickly. Euridiculous inevitably retires from the race after his terrible start, being lapped inside just a few laps. And then within 2 sectors, I've closed 3.5 seconds on this pack of cars. They are losing so much time. It's almost unbelievable. 3.5 seconds in 2 sectors. I know I'm good, but I'm not that good. As you see, Julian and FX losing the rear end a bit there. And a lot there in the case of FX. Julian's having to park it everywhere. Maku's actually getting a bit away from this pack, which is a bit annoying. But as we come off the chicane, I'm not quite close enough to go for a move. However, FX pits, which is quite good news for me, I guess, because it's one less car that I have to negotiate. At the end of lap 8, he comes in onto the super softs. That's going to be hard for him to get to the end of the race on without getting a puncture going that far, and I know his tyre wear is pretty bad, but Julian makes a bit of a mistake there. We're just putting him under the pressure now. We're both on the same wear-ish of tyres, and the same compound, of course. So I'm going to try and get this move done because I know that I'm fast. Got the DRS now on the slipstream, maybe to the inside into this corner. It's going to be quite a lunge if I do because I'm running quite high wings. Down the inside, go for the place, and I get it as he tries to go for the cutback, but that's not doing. So into 5th place now, seemingly for good. Now it's Mako ahead, who I'm going to have to try and catch as soon as possible in his Williams. On his ultra soft tyres, his pace doesn't look very good. He's presumably got wing damage like everyone seems to in this race. But through the last sector, he's parking it a bit there. I'm not going to try the inside of that corner, but he runs wide there. Again, around the outside. This is going to be amazing if I pull it off, but I'm obviously not because he's going to block me off. Disappointingly, Julian's hounding me as well. But Maku then comes into the pit lane, so I take the place anyway. And I'm into 4th. After just a few laps, albeit with pit stops, and then into 3rd as Reese pits quite early onto a set of super soft tyres to take him to the end of the Grand Prix. And I'm already on the podium with Hayden ahead of me, and then Elgo, the pole sitter, is currently leading the race. I can't breathe, like fucking hell. Is it that hard to breathe? Anyway, Hayden comes into the pits at the end of lap 10, rather predictively for a set of super soft tyres. Julian behind me in 3rd, and then that's Elgo, who's about 15-16 seconds ahead of me. His ultra soft tyres stays out for quite a while. Picar's Potato becomes our 3rd retiree of the race, and you can see my tyre wear there, 38%. So I know that I can take these tyres to about lap 20 without any kind of risk for a puncture. But I don't want to because I want to utilise the ultra soft tyres at the end of the race quite well. We can see various lap cars. We can see Picar's car in the wall there, the Williams, as we're lapping Coldo, unfortunately now. Fortunately for him, of course. And running a bit wide there, over the line. It's a 43.4. It's 11.7 to Elgo because he now pits rather late at the end of lap 12. For a set of super softs, and I wouldn't be surprised if that sees him jumped now into that place by by Reese. Jesus, I'm so bad at commentating. I'm probably never going to do this again, by the way, because I can't even breathe. But Grayshoe, who's had quite a good race so far, is holding down a solid 2nd place on the super softs that he started on. And we're going to see if he can get quite a good finishing position by the end of the race. But yeah, at this point, Detainable's now being held captive by Grayshoe, who's hopefully going to hold him up. And then when Reese is inevitably going to catch me, because I'm going quite slowly on these 52% worn tyres, when Reese catches me, who's in 2nd, by the way, it's got 5 seconds, but inside 2 or 3 laps, that's going to be nothing. Because he is very fast and I'm very not. But as we can see there, I've got absolutely nothing to say. I've edited this so badly. Why is this clip? What happens in this clip that warrants it being 49 seconds long? Like, why? Why is this clip 49 seconds long? Why have I just got a Discord notification? Why have I've got Discord notifications like every single second? I swear I muted my fucking... Okay, it's muted now. And as I get my first warning of the race, so I don't think I've got any kind of risk of getting a corner cutting penalty this race. 56% worn tyres. I'm going very, very slowly as Elgo's in 3rd, Detainable 2nd. And I think Elgo at this point has wing damage and is falling back a lot from race, and he's actually holding Hayden captive in that provisional 2nd place that he has. Over the line, it's a 43.9 if I can read, which I can't. And Detainables within 3 seconds now. I would not be surprised if he gets me within by the end of next lap, I'd say. And 1.5 laps later, funnily enough, there he is in his Force India. I'm not, at this point, I want to try and hold him up just in case by the end of the race maybe Hayden can fall into his maybe Reese can fall into Hayden's clutches, or maybe even my own if I have extraordinary pace on the ultra softs. But there he is. I know pit stop is quite long at this track, so I really don't think I have much of a chance of actively beating him in the race. But I might as well hold him up and see what I can do, if for nothing more than the pride of leading a race from last place after just a few laps. I say a few laps, like 15. But going defensive here, I'm absolutely parking. On Reese's screen, I'm on absolutely killed Ultra Softs at this point, because Codemasters wanted to entertain him, clearly. But Reese is all over the back of me. My Super Soft tyres probably aren't much better than the Ultra Softs would be at this point. As we go on to lap 18, he's got a very good run within a couple of tenths into turn 1. Going to squeeze back to the defensive line, run wide. He's on my inside, and then he takes me down the inside, squeezes me off, absolutely takes me out like the fucking noob he is. Fuck you, Reese. Terrible driver. But I've got the DRS now, but I'm about 6 million miles behind him, so there's absolutely no way that I'm going to retake the place. As we move on to now the end of the lap, so I come into the pits from P2, slow down for the line, 37 miles an hour, and at this point, of course, I have very little chance of actually winning the championship this race, because I need to win, which in itself is almost impossible, and hope that Hayden is outside the top 4. But the Red Bulls are both having very bad races, so that looks good for my championship standing, I guess. But if I can just set myself up well to almost have it guaranteed by Malaysia, I'd approve of that. As I now rejoin the pits in 5th place, Grayshoe also came in at the same time as me, holding down quite a good race on parallel strategy to me, not that far behind Julian, who's rather strangely gone onto a set of soft tyres, is just behind me in P6, and I've got a massive gap to try and close to Hayden on his super softs ahead of me. And then that's the top 4 of FX, Elgo, himself and Reese in no particular order. But 15.8 seconds, it's going to be very hard to actually close that down in the laps that remain. But as you can see there, teammates in the pits. Hayden has had a crash, I believe, with Elgo, who of course has front wing damage. I believe he's had a crash, and that means that he's going to be forced into the pit lane, which is desperate news for the constructors, but great news for myself, because I'm going to be into 4th place now. Julian into 5th, and Greshu, I think, into 6th. You can see his dot in the pit lane. He's going to have quite a hard job recovering into a good place from there. As we set the fastest lap, just proving how good my pace is, 11.2 seconds to FX, but all I have to do is close him down at about a second a lap, and I'm definitely doing more than that right now. If I close him at like a second a lap, then I will get him by the end of the race for a podium that I'd have never expected. As we go through onto the straight, cut onto the end of 21. As you can see on that lap alone, I've closed 2.5 seconds, as it's now less than 9 seconds to FX. And at this rate I could have him by around lap 26-ish, which would be very good. And then I know ahead of him is Elgo, who's compromised with wing damage, and I also know from my engineer at this point that he has a penalty. So if I can just get within 3 seconds of him, I don't need to overtake him, and I'll have a miraculous 2nd place. But at this point, I'm not sure if it's Elgo or Reese, this car ahead of me, and I hoped it was one of them, but it turns out to be Molsman, who I'm just lapping, which is very unfortunate, but not particularly surprising. I don't think I'm going to be getting the race win today, very unfortunately. I've said the word unfortunately so many times. I'm just stupid, really. And how long is this clip? Do I get an opportunity to breathe in this clip? 2 minutes and 2... Why? So it's more than an entire lap that I have to speak constantly. I have the lungs of a 78-year-old dead person, as I've already stated. So you can see we're closing in and closed up on FX1L. We've got the DRS on lap 25. We're going to try and get him by perhaps the end of the lap. It's half a second. I'm a lot faster, and if I can clear him, I could get up to Elgo perhaps by the end of the race. As you can see, I'm on the map there, as I believe he's that car going through the old Singapore Sling, or just gone through it. FX1L goes a bit defensive. He's clearly under the pressure of the almost champions. I'm so bad at commentating. But if I do win the AOR championship, which I'll give you a clue, I'm doing this commentary on the 14th of February, so yes, I have won the AOR Championship. Ooh, I should probably commentate on the race itself rather than talking about my AOR Championship. Do the Brendan Lee move into the right-hander. The good old Brendan Lee switchback, and I'm into 3rd place. Now with that amazing piece of... I'm not editing down this commentary at all, it's just going to be raw from the first take. And you're going to hear me say all of this, and you're going to love it. As we move on now to the end of 26, what's the gap to Elgo? 7 seconds still, with 5 laps to close. That does look pretty desperate for me. I need to be closing almost a second a lap, which on tyres that are starting to wear against the pole sitter, remember, it's going to be quite difficult to do. As we now skip on to the end of lap 27, and 1 minute 42.1, quite a way off my previous pace, but I'm 5.7 seconds behind Elgo now, closing over a second on that lap. But this is good enough pace, and that's quite encouraging, that perhaps from here, if I can just close up a bit more every single lap, then I could genuinely take 2nd place. As you can see now, FX1L has dropped out of 4th place. Desperate news for him in his first race, but Julian has taken it. As it's now under 3 seconds now, as we've gone to lap 30 to Elgo. And it's looking quite good at this point, because I can relax now. I've done the work. I've got it to an adequate gap, and I can just hope that maybe perhaps Reese has 3 penalties and I'll end up winning the race, but that does seem pretty unlikely. I speak to my engineer there for no reason. It's 22.4 seconds to Julian, so that just proves, having been racing him earlier on in the race, as we go a bit wide there, 2.7, I'm desperate to not get a warning, because if I get a warning and I get another one, I could get a penalty, which could cost me the place. But we move on now to the final lap of the race. An absolutely manic race. It's under 2 seconds now. Tyre wear, the tyres are screaming at this point. They're not looking good, but they're not going to get a puncture, so I don't really mind. But the gap to Julian just proves how fast I've been in this race. It's been an absolutely amazing one to commentate over and also breathe every so often. Fucking hell, I'm just useless. But it's pretty much a pit stop to Julian at this point, so I'm guaranteed a podium. It's 1.8 now to Elgo, and I know that he has a penalty, so I can take the place, but having come from 18th on the grid on lap 1, being last multiple times, 19th place, wing damage, everything going wrong. I did a calculation. I was actually 13 seconds, I think, behind Reese after lap 1 alone, and that's bearing in mind Reese had quite a poor lap 1 himself. Jesus, nice mic. Reese had quite a poor lap 1 himself, and I was only 13 seconds behind him. I was 13 seconds behind him after lap 1, and I've now pulled that back with all the traffic and all the problems and the wing damage that I like to bring up to be under a second away from Elgo. Going to finish 3rd place on track, 2nd place in actuality, and only a few seconds behind eventual race winner Reese, who had a great race himself. So as we come through the last sector now, there's a disconnected car ahead. Go through the final chicane. Elgo's got a laggy connection sign. I don't particularly want to race him. I know that I've got the 2nd place. Fireworks come on. FX retires from the race. Detainable wins the race. Through the last corner, it's going to be an absolutely amazing 2nd place in Singapore that I'm going to take right to the bank. Elgo gets a great 3rd place considering his wing damage. Julian gets 4th, which is great because he's Julian and therefore terrible. And Hayden is going to do a very good fight back to finish 5th considering his previous troubles battling Elgo, even though that incident was definitely his fault. I don't know why he's saying it's not. But there we are. Constructors is going to be massively assisted by this again because Red Bull are miles down. But there we are, 2nd place. And the podium animation is about to play. After the black screen, of course. As you can see in the corner there, FX1L sending some rather retarded messages to me saying, oh, I pit on lap 12 and I got a puncture on your strategy minus rep. Even though he was asking me before the race what strategy, 2-stop or 3-stop. I mean, this is just the bit of the video where I get salty, essentially. And then he's apparently saying that my strategy is saying pitting on lap 12 to super softs will get him to the end of the race. And then he's saying that I lied to him, even though A, the entire field that didn't lose their front wing did that, which admittedly was like 3 cars. And B, he pitted on lap 8, not lap 12, like he was telling me. So just looking through the race directors right now, because I always do. And they're about to cut onto the standings. And there we are. Good old lad Smeege winning by 143 points. To win in Malaysia, I need to have a 125-point gap. So it doesn't matter where I finish, but if neither Hayden nor THM win the race, essentially, then I will become champion. Hopefully I can finish in a good place. Hopefully I can finish at all. Haha. Hindsight. I love commentating on videos about 3 weeks after I actually recorded them. Anyway, it's a great result. I think Constructors is as near as makes confirmed anyway, as Red Bull have been absolutely disastrous recently. But it's been a great season as we get towards the end of it now. The greatest race of the season in my opinion. And there we are. On that note, my first and worst commentary is out of the way. Fucking it, that was terrible. I'm so bad at life.